Would you look at the time? It's Friday again, and you know what that means, right? Time for another week of predictions. So heading into week 4, we take a trip over to Houston for the Outlaws' first ever homestand of 2020. And as usual, before we begin, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. First off, here's your preview for week 4, and while you take a few moments to absorb that information, let's review how I did in week 3. And I'm not going to even bother sugarcoating it. I did terrible. Going 2 for 6 is not ideal, and that puts my overall record for Season 3 predictions at 13-5. It goes without saying that I gravely underestimated and overestimated the capabilities of specific teams. But you know what? That's okay. It just means I still have a lot to learn, which I'm perfectly fine with. It's probably better like this anyway. If everything was super easy to predict all the time, then this league would not be nearly as fun. Having things surprise you only makes the experience more enjoyable in my opinion. Let's see though if I can bounce back this week and get a better record. Now of course, the final thing we have to go over before getting started is how the series worked for those of you who are watching me for the first time. So each week, I'm going to predict the outcome of every single game on the schedule. Before giving my verdict with final scores, I'll give you my personal overview on the matches themselves. In these overviews, I'll discuss things like power levels, specific player matchups, and any other details I believe should be brought up like storylines and important news to be aware of. One other thing I may try and do is highlight some of these games as key matches of the week. If I call a game a key match, then that means it's one that I think is really worth your time to watch. I'll be sure to explain why any game falls under this category as we get to them. But that pretty much explains how it goes, so without wasting any more time, let's begin with our matches taking place on day 1. To start the weekend, the NYXL will play the Florida Mayhem. Before I go into the big details with this one, I wanted to highlight it as a key match right away, and the reason for it is simple. Both of these teams have a chance to prove themselves, and yeah, I know that may sound pretty silly for a team like New York, but just hear me out. So far, the NYXL have yet to defeat a single highly rated opponent. Their 3 wins have come against Boston, Houston, and London. That's not exactly what I'd call an accomplishment. The only team we rate that they've played so far is Philly, and that one wasn't all that close. So now the question becomes, why did the NYXL struggle so badly against the Fusion? Did they just have an off day? Were Philly really feeling themselves on that day? Or is it that the NYXL are overrated, or perhaps they're not really comfortable in this type of meta? I'm not sure how the rest of you feel, but I for one think the Mayhem could be a middle of the pack team this year, so if the NYXL lose and or struggle in this game, then maybe it's time to evaluate their overall strength in the current meta. When looking at it from Florida's point of view, this is a great chance to show the rest of the league what you're made of. If they can beat the NYXL or at least keep it close, then people might consider taking them a bit more seriously from here on out. And from an individual standpoint, their rookie flex support has a great shot to prove his worth. Gangnam Jin, who some experts think could win Rookie of the Year, gets to take on Jonak. This is a perfect chance for him to give us reason to consider him one of the many elite flex supports to be a part of this league. When shifting our attention over to both sides when it comes to rookies, I think we have to give some attention to the flex DPS. Yaki versus Who Are You is pretty intriguing. 2 rookie phenoms at the DPS position going head to head. If we're lucky, then maybe both of them will flex off the Mei and play some Genji or something. The Mei battle itself though is also fairly interesting to think about. So far, Yaki has looked much better on that hero, and if Who Are You gets outplayed like he did against Ivy, then Florida might be able to win this. Speaking of the winner, it's time to pick one. This may seem like a hot take for some, but I'm going 3-2 NYXL. I just have this gut feeling deep down that this could end up being close. I look at it like this. New York is clearly superior at some of the positions like main tank and main support, but even with these clear advantages, their Mei situation could really bring them down if Who Are You gets vastly outplayed by Yaki, and that's exactly what I think is going to happen. Who Are You straight up has not looked all that comfortable, and Yaki has. Simple as that. However, I don't think that will be enough in the end to stop the NYXL from winning this game. As of this moment, I find their team to be more trustworthy. Think about it like this. Both of these teams have lost to the Fusion, but at least the NYXL were able to take a map, you know? And as I said before, I believe the likelihood of Mono and Animo running ahead of Karayan and Chris is all-time high. Part of me also just trusts the likes of SBB and Jonak to clutch it out more than someone like BQB or Saya player plus Gangnam Jin. This game could be surprisingly close, but in the end I think New York takes it. Next up, we have the Toronto Defiant taking on the Atlanta Reign. This one is definitely interesting to think about. There's so much going on. First of all, we finally get to see Atlanta in action after having to wait 4 long weeks basically. This is one of the few teams that many consider to be title contenders during the offseason. Now it's time to see if they can live up to the hype. Not only that, but potentially seeing some of their new rookies in action is something to look forward to as well. Edison and Hawk in particular are two potential Rookie of the Year selections, so I'd like to see if they can fight through the pressure and high expectations and have a good debut. As for Toronto, they have to be feeling pretty good about themselves right now. Not everyone was giving them much of a chance against Philly, and yet they nearly came out and pulled off a reverse sweep. This is a team that could be absurdly dangerous if they gain enough confidence. If they can manage to play it close with Atlanta now too, then they are certainly a team to monitor closely. Since I have yet to see the Reign play, it's hard for me to say if they have any definitive advantages over their opponents, but from a simple evaluation of their team, they appear to be stronger. It's pretty fair to argue that maybe Carpe is better than Dogman, but that's about it. Tanks, main support, flex DPS, they all clearly favor the Reign, and there's a chance that Edison or whoever plays Hitscan could be stronger than Surefour and Logix as well. I know the reasoning is simple, but for that, I'm predicting the Reign to win this game 3-1. Even if, let's say, Surefour and Logix do end up having the advantage over Atlanta's Hitscan players, I still don't know if that's going to be enough. Nothing is really guaranteed, and I just think the Reign on paper are a lot better, so I see no reason why they'd end up losing this game. Now finally, to wrap up Saturday, the Outlaws take the stage in front of their home crowd for the first time as they take on the London Spitfire. Since this is Houston's first ever homestand game, and they are in dire need of a win, I'm going to mark this one down as a key match. I'm not gonna lie though, this one's pretty hard to talk about. The Outlaws are giving me little reason to have any faith in them right now. I know they've been ill and that some of their players are not on the best of places mentally at the moment, but that does not change the fact that they've been just awful. Sure, they looked competitive against Boston last week, but it's Boston. Is that really saying much? I'm of the belief that the Outlaws strongly need rest for the sake of getting over their illnesses and to just clear their minds in general. I know they're at home and all, but I fear that they're just already far too gone at this point for it to make much of a difference. I'm also just waiting on the day when the coaching decides to stop swapping between Raucous and Repel like every other map. How can you expect your team to build up good synergy when you rotate your supports around so much? The Outlaws seriously need a break. They have to evaluate their issues and figure out what works best for them moving forward. I suppose having a winnable game against London might give them enough motivation to get the win for their home crowd, but I still have my doubts anyway. London seems to be in a better place right now. If anything, they're coming off the opposite end of the spectrum. They're finally starting to figure it out, and unlike Houston, they pulled through and actually got a reverse sweep last week. Doing it against the Justice in their own arena makes it even more impressive. After showing some unsatisfactory results in week 1, they made some changes that clearly seem to be working right now. The Spitfire are young, and in my opinion, that makes them a largely momentum-based team. Getting a win in the fashion they did probably has those players feeling very good. They proved that they can bounce back from adversity if it presents itself while properly implementing adjustments made by the coaching staff. Theoretically, Houston should be the better team, but London absolutely is in a better state right now. They have the better synergy and they already know what it takes to beat a team at their own home arena, so I can't help but feel like they're in a better position to win this match. With that in mind, I'm selecting London to win 3-1. Right now, I don't believe Houston has what it takes to win a game. After the events that have transpired over these last couple of weeks, I refuse to pick Houston to win another game until they earn my trust back. Oh, and as a side note, pay attention to Momo versus J-Mac. Right now, these are arguably the two biggest feeders on Reinhardt at the main tank position, and I'm curious to see what happens when they meet head to head. Honestly, whoever feeds slightly less will probably be the one whose team comes out on top. Welp, that's all I've got for you when it comes to Saturday, so now let's talk Sunday. This day is going to be a bit more fun as we get one more game compared to Saturday. To start the day off, the Uprising play the Red Hot Fusion. Boston, who is coming off their first win of the season, hope to keep the momentum up with a quality early season win. But do they have what it takes to pull it off? To be completely honest, I don't think they do. No disrespect to Boston, but Philly's in a different league right now. They're 4-0 and have only really come close to losing once. Everything looks so good for them right now. Their supports are popping off. Carpe is popping off. Ivy, he's arguably the number 1 main in the league right now, and Sato has been surprisingly good. I, for one, don't believe Boston could realistically hope to beat the Fusion when they're playing at such a high level. If the Uprising want to win this game, then many of their players will need to show up in a big way. It can't just be Myung-Hwan setting up the plays. The DPS have to find a way to keep pace with Carpe and Ivy, and Axiom has to play the same way he did against Houston, otherwise Sato might destroy him. And yes, I know that sounds really weird, but we live in a world where that could happen now. Boston historically has been known to be this team that surprises us, so maybe things could happen and they could make some magic occur. The likelihood of things going that way is small, but you never really know, right? There's two specific player matchups I plan to pay attention to. The first of which is Myung-Hwan versus Alarm. These are arguably two of the top 3 rookie flex support prospects coming out of contenders, and I'd love to see them form a rivalry that lasts for years to come, starting with this match. Even though this game isn't exactly fair, I'm sure there's some major bragging rights on the line here. People have gone back and forth on which one of these guys is better, so whoever has the better day will likely be the one to put an end to this argument. Matchup number 2 to think about heading into Sunday afternoon is Jerry versus Carpe. Trust me when I say I'm being completely serious. I'm not memeing around when I say that this is a good test to see where Jerry ranks in terms of his skill level. Sure, he looked good in the Houston game, but that was against Blase. Let's see what happens when he plays a real hitscan player like Carpe. If Jerry pops off, then maybe it's time to start calling him one of the many hidden gems that Boston has found over these last couple of years. Even though these matchups intrigue me, that still doesn't change the fact that Boston's chances of winning are slim. With that said, I gotta go with the Fusion in a quick 3-0. I'd love nothing more than to see Boston prove me wrong, but as it currently stands, they're clearly a couple tiers below their opponents. They're not nearly as capable, plain and simple. Next up on the schedule is the Paris Eternal taking on the Atlanta Reign. Let me quickly take the time to say that this definitely deserves to be highlighted as a key match of the week. I should probably reiterate the fact that we finally get to see the Reign play. With them being considered title contenders, it's crucial for them to come out and back up those claims with a good first impression. And taking down a Paris team who seems to be finding their groove is a great way to do so. But since we've already talked a good bit about the Reign, let's zoom in on the Paris Eternal because this is a team I also find quite fascinating. It's pretty obvious that these guys are not just starting to build momentum, but also their confidence. The last 2 games they've played in have been victories that have come in convincing fashion. The 3-1 victory over Washington in particular is an eye-catcher. Hanbin more than rose up to the occasion in his debut, and Xe conquered the challenge of playing against Corey. I'm willing to bet this Paris team loves where they're at right now. Because of that confidence, I'm of the belief that they have a chance to actually beat Atlanta. Call me crazy, but I'm expecting a close game. Confidence can go a long way in sports, especially with new players and coaches, and I expect that to elevate Paris's level of play against an opponent who theoretically should be superior. But sometimes confidence and good synergy just isn't enough, and that in my opinion is going to be the case in their match against Atlanta. As a result, I say the Reign take it 3-2 in what may end up being the match of the week. Atlanta is a scary team with so many options to take account for, and I'm just not quite sure if I trust Paris to be fully prepared for something like that, even if this is their only match of the week. I'm probably going to sound like a broken record here, and this is basically the theme of the video at this point, but there's some potential rookie showdowns to pay attention to. One is a potential Edison versus Xe Duel. A lot of people think Edison was the #1 rookie hitscan prospect available, but with the way Xe has been playing so far, people might start to change their minds, especially if Xe outplays his rookie counterpart this weekend. If Xe once again puts his team on his back, then he might be the deciding factor that gives Paris the edge. But I can't say for certain what is going to happen since I have yet to see Edison play, nor do I know for a fact that he'll be starting. The other matchup to potentially look forward to is Hawk versus Hanbin. Unless FRD is the starter, this will be the second game played in the league for both of these guys at this point in time. You have arguably the best Western rookie off-tank taking on the best rookie Korean off-tank. It doesn't get much more exciting than that, and to add on to it, this is a chance for these two to continue their rivalry into the Tier 1 scene. For those who don't already know, these two recently squared off in the Contenders Gauntlet Finals held in Korea. With Hawk's team coming out on the losing end, he'll be looking to get some revenge, while also attempting to prove that he is truly the best new off-tank in the league. There's so much to look forward to in this game, and I could not be more excited to see how it turns out. In the second to last game of the weekend, we have the Spitfire versus the Mayhem. Before week 3, I thought Florida would win this one with relative ease, but now I'm feeling the need to reconsider. Like with Paris, London feels like one of those rosters who will only get stronger as they build up their confidence, and if they beat Houston like I expect them to, then there's a good chance they push Florida to the brink. However, I still do believe they hold the advantage, which ultimately will allow them to persevere and win this series 3-2. The advantage they possess is simple. It's called consistency. London is still relatively inexperienced, so they're bound to make more mistakes while not adjusting in the ways their coaches want them to. Meanwhile, Florida has veteran talent who already have a good idea of what it takes to play consistently. Now, it is true that they too have a couple of rookies in their starting lineup, but it's important to recognize two things: skill gap and overall environment. Gangnam Jin and Yaki played under Runaway, and while they aren't a different team now, their head coach is still there to guide them, so they have a good sense of familiarity that many of the London players simply don't have as much of. I trust London to make this a match. I really do, especially after what they pulled off against Washington, but I need to see some more positive results from them before I'm willing to consistently commit to them in these predictions. And lastly, to end the Houston homestand, the Outlaws take the stage once again, but this time against the Toronto Defiant. I already discussed both of these teams in great detail earlier in the video, so I'll try to make this one quick. I think you guys kind of understand where I'm at with the Outlaws right now, so I can't help but feel like they're at a disadvantage. I really don't think they're where they need to be to effectively play and win games. Unless that home crowd makes them dig up some kind of magical power from deep within, I don't give them much of a chance to beat Toronto. The Defiant are playing above my expectations, while Houston continues to disappoint. You tell me who's in the better place right now. Picking Toronto to win this one seems like the obvious choice, and that's exactly why I'm picking them to win 3-0. I really do like where the Defiant are at as a team right now. As I said before, it's impressive how they were able to keep up with the Fusion, and I think having those unpredictable strategies makes them a dark horse team that a lot of people could have trouble with. Also, seeing Beast play on par with his opponents is a very good and promising sign. Speaking of Beast, I'm curious to see how he fares against Momo. Based off the data and gameplay we have so far, the logical outcome should be that Beast comes out on top, especially when you factor in how much better a supporting cast is. But I will say this, if Momo finds a way to boom Beast, then I think Houston has a shot here, as Momo so far has arguably been the biggest weakness on Houston. If he can elevate his play and maybe find some needed confidence against London the day before, then things could get interesting, but in my opinion, the chances of that occurring are very small. So Beast should be the better player as Toronto goes on to win this series and get back in the W column. Welp, that wraps up my predictions for week 4. What do you guys think of them? Let me know down in the comments section and feel free to leave your own predictions while you're at it. Also, if you enjoyed this content, then be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you're new. You can also support me beyond my videos by purchasing a channel membership, joining my Discord, and following me on Twitter. As always, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I really do appreciate it, and until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.